podcast series. Been a bit since we've been behind the microphones with you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody is safe, healthy, and well as we head into the holiday months here in 2020. Of course, the 2020 season now in the books at Seekonk Speedway. Of course, it's colder now. The race season's over. Everybody getting ready to spend time at the holidays and get geared up for 2021, a year we hope is going to be back to what is normal for the 2021 season. That's obviously our hope. Want to welcome a couple of champions onto this podcast, our Champions edition of the 2020 season. Waited a little bit, approximately a month, a little bit over that, to get everybody a little bit of a time to relax, settle in, and now as we start the winter series, we're going to get back into our 75-year specials with some throwbacks in time, talking with some of the past of the racetrack, and going to start, though, with this Champions podcast, looking back at 2020 one more time to crown those drivers as champions of the COVID-shortened season. Now, obviously, everybody knows that the coronavirus was a thing starting in February or March. Obviously, that comes before the race season. Shut down the track for a while due to the restrictions that Massachusetts put in place due to the COVID pandemic to try to stop the spread. And obviously, that meant no Saturday night racing to start, no Friday night racing, no thrill shows, nothing. As the season went on, we get into July, we opened up with some Fast Friday racing, no spectators in the grandstands, no Saturday night racing, and no thrill shows, and that would stay that way all year due to the regulations by the state. So no pro stocks, no late models, no sport trucks, I missed the division there, sport trucks, sportsmen, the late models, and the pro stocks. None of those divisions in action this season at all. No thrill shows for our fans, no modified races, no Open Wheel Wednesday, no Haunted 100. You know, none of the races that were planned, that were major events, happened. The only thing that happened this year was Fast Friday, 10 events, no spectators, but it was great racing. So I think some of the best Fast Friday racing we've seen, especially in a couple of our divisions. I mean, the car counts were good. We lost a few cars here and there during the season due to the pandemic, some of the travel restrictions, things like that. But overall, a great year of competition on Fast Friday, and again, showing that our Fast Friday program is strong. Looking forward to it getting even better and going back to a normal year, hopefully, in 2021. And, of course, obviously looking forward to getting our Saturday night divisions and our thrill shows and our modified races back on the track for 2021. Get to that another time. But, again, want to recap our champions on Fast Friday. We're going to hear from a couple of them, and also want to welcome our iRacing champion. Those who either watched that or if you don't know about it, we ran an iRacing road trip tour. iRacing is a simulation series game. A lot of people don't want to call it a game. It is a simulation. Competes at some of the tracks in the area. We ran races at Oxford Plains Speedway. There's Stafford Speedway's on there, Thompson. Not Seekonk yet. We're working on that. But a lot of our competitors competing in an iRacing series, an 8-race road trip tour, we called it. A point fund was given out. We had a lot of sponsors on board. I'll be thanking some of those sponsors during this episode as well. But want to talk about that series as well. Broadcasted on speed51.com. There is a way to go back and watch those races if you missed it on Speed 51, but some good action, and really was a good way for some of our Saturday night competitors and Friday night competitors to compete when they couldn't in the off season during the COVID pandemic. We didn't have any racing on the track, so we did it virtually, and then we still did it throughout the season as well, even during the Fast Friday slate. Our 2020 Fast Friday champions, of course, in the Seekonk Speedway Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Bandits, we had Ethan Dion picking up the championship. In the Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Outlaws, it was Isaiah Newcomb. In the Everett Auto Parts Sport 4s, we had Mikey Lefort. Doug Benoit was the champion in the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Pure Stocks. And in the next Pit Stop Legends, it was Jake Johnson returning for his second Legends Championship in his career. We had 3 drivers pick up their second title in 2020, and then 2 drivers pick up their first. In the iRacing series, it was Ryan Kuhn, a driver that many of you know, who's competed in our late models and our pro stocks, a former late model champion, a former legend car winner as well. Won the iRacing championship this year. We'll talk to him as part of this episode as well. We're going to talk to Ethan Dion, our Bandit champion. We're going to talk to Michael Fort, our Sport 4 champion, and we will talk to Ryan Kuhn, our iRacing champion. So a little bit of different flavor here as part of the introduction. We're going to start off. I'm going to recap each division briefly. Then we'll bring in the champion for that division if they're going to join us. We're not bringing in all 6 champions as part of this podcast. It would be a little bit too long, but we've picked a couple that we think you'd want to hear from. And that's how we're going to do it. So we're going to get started with Ethan Dion in the Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Bandits. Our champion picking up his first championship in his career. Driver of that orange number 8. Great run for him in 2020. picking up the championship, going right down to the wire, though, with 15 Bandoleros taking the green flag at some point in this division. Great car count this year again in the Bandolero Bandits. 15 cars on the track at some point this year. This one goes right down to the wire, as I mentioned. Richie Helger Jr. led the championship for much of the year, and unfortunately, his final 3 weeks did not fall his way. Couple accidents, couple misfortunes. He was involved in a little bit of a rough accident in turn 3, damaged the car pretty good. They had to put it back together, take it apart, then put it back together. And ever since then, that number 99, the Helger South Coast Power Equipment machine, was just not right. So, tough break for Helger. He ends up second in the championship, but it's Dion that puts together that consistency to pick up his first championship at Seekonk Speedway. He won it by 22 points over Richie Helger Jr. Great run for him, obviously, to pick up the championship. Second place going to Richie Helger. Great run for him this year as well. Want to congratulate him. Brent Robideau was third in the championship. A fantastic run for him behind the wheel of the number 25. Just a fantastic effort and a big improvement from last year for Robideau. Mike Hannafin finished in the 4th spot behind the wheel of the number 76. Now, of course, that is the son of John Hannafin, a former sportsman competitor at Seekonk. I believe John won a couple championships in the sportsman division. So his son taking the action. Mike Hannafin finishing 4th in the championship, and rounding out the top 5 was Meliana Shalaski in her debut season behind the wheel of the number 99. Ethan Dion's championship included top 5 finishes in 8 out of the 10 races. Very consistent for him. The races that he didn't finish in the top 5, I believe he finished 9th or so in those 2 after an accident. And he was able to visit Everett's Auto Parts Victory Lane once this season, picking up a victory on September the 11th en route to his championship. So Dion wins it, 22 points over Richie Helger Jr. The other winners this year, overall recap of the winners, 10 races in the Seekonk Grand Prix. Bandolero Bandits this season at Seekonk Speedway. Great year it was. And picking up 4 victories was Darren Krantz Jr., rising onto the scene and putting together a dominant performance in all 4 of his wins. Ryan Vaness Jr., the son of Pro Stock competitor Ryan Vaness, was able to pick up 2 victories in the Seekonk Grand Prix, Bandolero Bandits. And then 4 drivers picking up 1. Ethan Dion, I mentioned, with 1. Richie Helger Jr. picked up his first career win. Brody Monahan picked up the win on opening night in his return to Seekonk. And Joel Newcomb picking up his first career win behind the wheel of the white number 22. So there you have the Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Bandit recap. I mentioned we're going to thank some of our sponsors. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear from Ethan Dion, our Bandit champion. But before that, I'm going to name some of our sponsors that helped the 2020 season get off the ground. Everett's Auto Parts, Roy and his team, Seekonk Grand Prix, Wayne Darling and his team, Helger South Coast Power Equipment, and Nick's Pit Stop. Those are your 4 division sponsors as part of the Fast Friday series, sponsoring each division. Also want to thank Nats Racing Engines for his continued support, Chaz's Auto Body for coming on board bigger in 2020 and for 2021, and Spring Villa Memory Care, Craig Pianca and his team, a sportsman competitor, putting up bonus money on our Fast Friday series this season. Thanks to those guys, there's a lot more. And as I said, every time before we take a break, I'm going to welcome and thank some of our sponsors from the 2020 season at the same time. Talking about that break, let's take the first one of this edition of the Champions Podcast. When we come back, we will hear from Ethan Dion. We'll talk to him, see what he thinks about winning the championship. Has it really settled in with him yet? A couple of, basically a month since the season ended. We'll talk to him about that, talk to him about his plans for 2021, and much more when we come back on the Seekonk Speedway Champions edition of the 2020 podcast. And welcome back from the break as part of the Seekonk Speedway Champion Coronation podcast. Our first guest has joined us as part of the Seekonk Speedway hotline right here on the podcast. We're going to welcome in for the second time as part of the podcast so far in 2020, Ethan Dion, our 2020 Seekonk Grand Prix Bandit Bandolero champion behind the wheel of that number 8, the orange machine you're so familiar with as part of Fast Friday. This year for Ethan, a lot of top 5 finishes, 1 feature win, but I think, Ethan, you'll agree with me, the most important part of this season, the championship for you. It's almost 2 months now since the final checkered flag, since it was you were convinced that night that you won the championship, you got your trophy. How are you feeling now? Has it soaked in? Do you quite understand? Have you really thought about what it means now to be a 2020 champion?
Well, first off, it feels really good. I'm really happy, and my victory was really good.
Impressive? Is that the right word? Impressive? Do you, do you feel impressed? So you picked up one win on September the 11th. That's a big night to pick up a win. Of course, a memory night to back in 2001 on 9/11. You had 1 week there towards the end of the year where you were involved in a wreck on September the 18th. That kind of hurt your chances at that point. If you thought about on September 18th at the end of the night, you were not far out, but far enough out in the championship that you needed Richie Helger Jr. to struggle, and then he gets in a wreck. I mean, you're never excited to see one of your other competitors wreck, but that gave you a chance to get out front. What was the last couple weeks like? Were you nervous going into the last couple weeks
really,
to try to win it?
I didn't really even know that I was a championship contender. My dad told me the second to last race, so I didn't even know that I was a contender.
Oh my goodness! Wow, I didn't know that. That's a shocker.
We were originally just running.
Okay, so
we weren't running for points or anything.
Wow. So this is breaking news to me, everybody. Ethan Dion did not know he was even in contention or close enough to win the championship until the second to last race. So the last 2 weeks, you finished third on October the 2nd and then second on the last night of the season. Take me through that last night. What was that like to get out of the car, get the championship trophy? I mean, you must have been so excited, and you probably still are. But take me through. That must be maybe one of the best moments in your racing career so far.
At least in 2020, that was just really exciting. I was really nervous actually. And then the last couple of laps, I basically knew if I could hold off Brent Roberto, I could win the championship.
Wow. What a feeling that's going to be. So Ethan wins it in the final tally by 22 points over Richie Helger Jr. We talked about during the segment here before we welcomed him on about Helger's struggles the last couple weeks. A couple of accidents for him in that number 99. Ethan's consistent and ends up the champion in 2020. Now, Ethan, before I give you a chance to thank some of your sponsors, you raced at Waterford this year as well, had some success over there. You're racing there. What are you planning on doing for 2021? Has there been some discussion? Are you going to continue with the Bandoleros? What are you thinking for 2021?
Next year, we're still going to be running Seekonk, and we're going to be running the Bandolero Outlaws. And we're also going to run Waterford here and there. But we're also going to try and find a Nemo Light or a Legend to race it. And if we can find one, we'll probably just practice it on and off throughout the year, along with racing Seekonk full time.
Wow. So it sounds like you're going to be busy, no? Wow. Ethan's going to be busy in 2021. Nemo Light or a Legend car. Of course, the Legend cars we'll talk about later in the podcast, running weekly at Seekonk as well. And we had Jake Johnson pick up the Legends Championship this year. So Ethan able to celebrate his championship while Jake and the Legends celebrates his in 2020. Well, obviously, Ethan, there's no banquet this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I guess that's the one negative to winning the championship at Seekonk in 2020. Of course, the COVID pandemic affected the racing. We didn't get started till later in the season. You're still able to win the championship. It's a very exciting moment and really could be a springboard for you to go to the Outlaws and have some success. What sponsors are behind this effort? I know you got mom and dad obviously do the work, help you out, but are there anybody else you want to thank? And them, you could thank them too, because without them, you wouldn't be the champion.
Yeah, so I'd like to thank my mom, my dad, and my sister, Team W Marine, and Montville Forest, and Ben Bazowski from Hudson Speedway for sponsoring me last year and coming back to sponsor me next year.
Wow. So Ethan's got a good group of supporters behind the wheel. Again, I mentioned that familiar orange number 8, the brightest bandolero out there on the track. You're never going to miss him on the track. And in the final 3 weeks, 3 top 3 finishes propels Ethan Dion to the 2020 Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Bandit champion. Want to thank Ethan for joining us. When we come back from the break, we're going to move on to our next couple of divisions, the Bandolero Outlaws, the other Bandolero division, and the Sport 4s. In our next segment, a couple more guests still to come. Welcome back to the Seekonk Speedway Champions podcast, recapping the 2020 Fast Friday champions at the Seekonk Speedway. Want to thank Ethan Dion for joining us. Always a great interview. The second time we've talked to him as part of the podcast, and that kid is going somewhere. Got a lot of talent behind the wheel of that number 8 Bandolero, picking up the championship in the Bandit division in 2020. So a great job to him. Congratulations. We'll move on to our other divisions as part of Fast Friday. Of course, already recapping the Bandits. Now we're going to move on to the Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Outlaw division. The other Bandolero division, basically the same car, a little bit different. And the big difference here is the age group in the drivers. These drivers are a little bit older, a little bit more experienced behind the wheel. And boy, this one went right down to the wire, even closer than the Bandolero Bandit Championship did. Now, Isaiah Newcomb picks up the 2020 championship in the Bandolero Outlaw division. A fantastic run for him behind the wheel of the number 22. We talked about Joel Newcomb in the last segment picking up a win in the Bandolero Bandits, while it's his brother Isaiah winning the championship in the Outlaws. This is his second championship in 2020. He won a championship in the Bandoleros at one of the Connecticut racetracks as well. So doubling up, picking up the Seekonk title, and he wins it by just 4 points over Nick Chaber Jr. Now, most of the year, it was a dogfight between these two. Chaber led a lot of it. Chaber opened the season with 4 second-place finishes, followed it up with a bunch more top fives, but it was the second to last night that was the fault for Nick Chaber Jr. An accident sidelined him before the finish of the race, and that was the difference. Isaiah picking up a bunch of points on that night, opening up the gap on the final night from 2 points to 4 points in the final tally. And it's Isaiah Newcomb to pick up the win in the Bandolero Outlaw Championship. 2 feature wins on the season. He picked up a victory on July the 24th in that number 22, and also on September the 18th. He was a victor in the Bandolero Outlaws. Nick Chaber picked up a win of his own September 25th, right near the end of the season. He was able to go to Everett Auto Parts victory lane. Smilin' Reese Bogue, third in the championship behind the wheel of that number 4 CT. His final race in the Bandoleros coming on October the 9th, and it was one of his 4 feature wins, picking up a win in his final Bandolero race, 4 total on the season for him. Second in the 2-win category this year, nobody. In the 3-win category was Brandon LaBelle, picking up 3 feature wins on the season. A great season for him. He finished 4th in the championship. And Steve Bowden with a great run for a top 5, almost picking up his first win. Not quite able to get it, but a strong year for him to pick up a 5th place finish in the championship. So again, our winners this year, Isaiah Newcomb picking up 2 feature wins. Nick Chaber Jr. got 1 at the end of September. 4 feature wins for Smilin' Reese Bogue behind the wheel of the Green 4 CT, and Brendan LaBelle picked up 3 wins on the season. If you look at the championship battle, Newcomb wins it by 4 over Nick Chaber. Bogue was 3rd, LaBelle 4th, Bowden was 5th in the championship standings. If you look at the drivers that ran the whole year, we had 8 drivers compete in all 10 races, and a total of 14 different drivers take the green flag in the 2020 Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Outlaw season. So congratulations to Isaiah Newcomb, his first championship. We talked to him a couple weeks back on the podcast, a couple episodes back. A great kid, a lot of talent behind the wheel. Also running in the Legend cars this year on a full-time basis. Was able to finish 6th in the championship there as well, missing the final night. But other than that, 2 double-duty divisions. Double duty is a tough task, especially, never mind on a Saturday night, but on a Friday night, it seems to me like it'd be even tougher, jumping from a Bandolero to a Legend car. So Isaiah Newcomb, the big winner in the Bandolero Outlaw Championship. Our other Fast Friday division we're going to talk about in this segment is the Everett Auto Parts Sport 4 division. A great battle this year in the Sport 4. Again, this division continues to grow. 26 cars taking the green flag at some point in a main event in 2020. And when it was all said and done, it was a dominating championship victory for Mike Lefort, driver of the Lucky 13 Racing, number 13, the Sport 4 champion for the second time in his career. If you think back to 2019, it was Lefort and AJ Manuel that die-hard battle of 2 die-hard racers right down to the final lap of the final race, and it was Lefort beating Manuel in a tie, a dead tie in 2019. Lefort picking up the tiebreaker with a win. In 2020, he also won the championship, but a completely different story behind the wheel of that number 13. 422 points. He won the championship by over 40 points over Tyler Almeida, who ended up second. Lefort picking up 1 win on the season. That was July 31st, but The week after, August the 28th, which, yes, there was a month in between there due to the Rhode Island travel ban being implemented, and us trying to figure out how that was going to work into our Fast Friday schedule. So we took a couple weeks off to figure that out. When we returned on August the 28th, Lefort was involved in an accident, damaged the number 13, so bad to the point he was not able to bring it out until the last week of the season. Lucky for him, his friend Christian Herman helped him out, got him a car to run the rest of the season with. Of course, he brought his regular car back at the end of the year, but he picked up multiple top 5 finishes driving that number 13, which was the number 9, renumbered to the 13 for Lefort. He owes probably a good sense of gratitude to the Herman family for letting him drive. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a 2-time champion at Seekonk Speedway. So we're going to talk to Lefort right around the corner of the next break and see if we can get some insight about this 2020 championship, what it meant to him to win 2 in the Sport 4 division, what this year was like in the middle of the pandemic, and specifically about that wreck and what influence that had on his 2020 season. Now, Almeida finished second in the championship, did not pick up a win, but a consistent enough year to finish second. Dave Westgate, a former champion, was third. Henry LaValle, fourth. A great run for him in 2020. Really a rejuvenized year for him, jumping back to the top of the division in the top 5. And it was Tyler Duhanchik rounding out the top 5 in the number 48. Now, Tyler finished 5th in the championship. Not a good indication, though, of what happened in 2020 for him. He had his best year to date, missed the final 2 races because of a blown motor, and was still able to finish top 5. So that's a credit to the success he had earlier in the year with multiple top 5 finishes and coming close to picking up that first career win. Got to expect him to be a threat in 2021 to be a championship favorite. Now, the other winners this year in the Sport 4 division, I mentioned AJ Manuel earlier. He did not run for the championship this year, but when he did compete on the track in 6 events, he was able to go to victory lane in 4 of them. So AJ Manuel, an impressive run, 4 wins in his 6 starts this season. Jordan Lopes returned, picked up 2 feature wins of his own behind the wheel of the number 77. Of course, I mentioned Lefort not going to victory lane except once on July the 31st. The other winners this year, Dave Westgate, the former champion, picked up a win on September the 18th. And, of course, it was Crystal Murray driving the number 38, the Murray's Garage Machine, picking up her win on September the 25th. Murray missing a couple of weeks in the season due to her education, of course, in college, missing a couple of weeks there. And the final night of the year was Tim Bolger picking up his first career Sport 4 win. So a good mix of winners this year in the Sport 4 division. And, of course, you got your champion, Mikey Lefort, for the second time. I want to thank a few more Seekonk Speedway sponsors before we take a quick break. Nick Lascola Racing. Of course, the same people that run the Nick's Pit Stop, Keith Lascola and Nick Lascola, great gang there, sponsoring the Legends Cars division. And this year, a big Legends Cars race, the Nick Lascola Racing Summer Showdown, the $1,000 to win race that happened in September, won by Luke LeBrun. Thanks, Nick, for all your support of the 2020 season. Lambert Brothers Racing, Russ Lambert and the team there, sponsoring some bonus money this year in the Pure Stocks. Thank you to them. Great supporters in 2020. Viper Graphics. Check them out for all your graphics needs. Great support from them. The Levesque family is part of the Sport 4 team, putting up some bonus money this year. Thank you to them. Jerry's General Maintenance, a big supporter again in 2020 with some sponsorship towards some lap money for the big Foxtrot race at the end of the year. Walsh's Towing, Mr. Walsh and the team for all their support, not only financially with some bonus money this year, but also for showing up every week to help us out. Team Morshed Landscaping, Tom Morshed and his team, and Sam Matera and Boss Lady Graphics, also sponsoring the 2020 season at the Action Track of the A's. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk to your 2020 Everett's Auto Parts Sport 4 champion, Mike Lefort, joins the Champions podcast right around the turn. Stick with us. Welcome back to the Seekonk Speedway Champions Coronation Podcast. Been a great episode so far. I want to thank Ethan Dion for joining us as part of our Seekonk Grand Prix Bandolero Bandit segment, one of our champions in 2020. Champion we talked about in the last segment, of course, Isaiah Newcomb and the Bandolero Outlaws, but this champion joining us now on the Seekonk Hotline, the Sport 4 champion, this year the division by Everett's Auto Parts as part of our Friday night series. In the COVID year, Mike Lefort picks up his second straight in the Sport 4 division. Now, Mike, this was way different than the year before, right? You had AJ Manuel and you go down to the last lap, literally the year before, and tie for the championship. You come out on top. This year, a completely different ball game with the COVID in the middle. Everybody had to deal with the COVID, but you've got the virus delaying the season. And then you basically clinched this thing in the second to last week. You basically didn't even have to show up the final week. That's how far ahead you were. Walk me through what this was like from a driver's perspective, the bounce around of the season and winning a second title.
Kyle, to be honest with you, coming into this year, I was actually looking at it as just go with it. I put my son into a Bandolero this year, so when I ended last year, I was like, I finally got my championship. Now it's time to get my son up and running. He's in the 19 Bandolero. I'm just getting his feet wet this year. But when the year started, I went out there. I raced a couple races. The car was running great, and my son pushed me to race the season as much as we could with COVID. I know we had a couple races off. We didn't know what was going to happen from week to week. That little guy, he pushed me. He said, "Dad," he goes, "if I'm racing, you're racing." And so with the COVID year, it was kind of righteous trying to get a good rhythm going because you never know what next week's going to bring. We could get a call throughout the week. We're shut down again. We're open again. So no one really knew what it was going to bring. It was a great championship. I mean, we had a lot of good races out there. To me, it's a championship. We lost a couple races, but my only thing is with the whole championship for this year is there was some big-time people that AJ Manuel, who he was in school and whatnot, so it kind of helped him in his favor because of the COVID. He was building his business better by going to school for what he's doing. So for him not being there kind of helped me out a lot. Me and AJ, me and him are neck to neck. You got the Crystal Murray, she's out there, she's right with us. I mean, there's a couple fast guys out there this year. Everybody's starting to pick up their game now. It's not all just those junkyard and throw together cars anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so you start the year with 3 podium finishes in the first 3 weeks. And again, the season delayed basically a little bit over a month for you guys on Fast Friday. So you start the year with 3 finishes inside the top 3. And then we get to week 4, and that really, to me, is the turning point of the season. You wreck. It doesn't, honestly, from the track perspective, from the flag stand, didn't look like a terrible wreck. It didn't look like it would destroy the car. But obviously, when you sit there and look at it, it put a lot of damage to that race car. And luckily for you, I say luckily, Christian Herman offered up his car since he wasn't running this year, gave you the opportunity to sit behind the wheel. And you tell me, but it seems really that he saved your chances to win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, I got to thank Christian Herman a lot for letting me use his car. But let's back up to that accident a little bit. The accident wasn't that bad of a wreck. My nose was over a good 6 inches. And me being so anal and liking to have the pretty car out there and want everything to try to be perfect as much as we can, you know, sometimes it's hard with racing goes. I actually bought it to Finn's Auto Body in Coventry, and Freddie over there hooked me right up. I can't thank that guy enough. He got this car back to pinpoint standards. I mean, it's crazy how fast the work he done. It took a little bit for me to get in there because he was busy, and it just happened all of a sudden. So that's when Christian stepped up, called me up one day. He goes, "How's the car doing?" I said, "It's not done yet," but I said, "We ain't racing this week. We'll try again next week." He goes, "Well, I'm not going with that." No, I said to him, I was like, "What do you mean, bud?" And he goes, "I got my car. It's not your car." He goes, "It's not as good as your car." He goes, "But I'll bring it to you. You do what you got to do and go out there and finish your season off."
Wow.
So with that being said, he brought me the car, and I did a little bit of my own geometry to it, put a little bit of my own brain into it. Had a fight with him over a couple little things I had to do, but I did get it to where I needed it to be.
Yeah, obviously it worked out really well for you. So you come out of the box after that, really finishing in the top 5 or 6 basically every week, and then you get the car back in full standard for that final night. And the final night didn't go that well for you due to some issues that happened in front of you, kind of got collected in. But overall, still able to pick up this championship. Does it mean anything more special that it's 2 straight? I mean, I know you mentioned AJ didn't run the whole season. He won 4 races when he ran. Jordan Lopes picked up a couple wins. Crystal Murray with a win. Tim Bolger picked up a win. Westgate was in victory lane. The competition's definitely come up. So 2 straight titles has got to feel good overall.
To tell you the truth, Kyle, I can't thank Seekonk Speedway enough for even putting on this season of racing with all the problems we had. And we know, and you know more than I, and Dave over there knows more than I, and Ed. They all, we might not click all the time because there's little things that happen, but I can't thank those guys enough. They do a lot. They put on a lot. They go behind the scenes. A lot of us racers and spectators don't see the stuff that they have to do to even get us to where we were and where we are today. I mean, we're hoping that 2021 is a little bit better year. And like I said, it's for this year it was a little off season, but having Christian step up to the plate and let me borrow his car is great. Everybody stepped up. Everybody that I raced with, like they just AJ, if you need anything, let me know. Anybody that has an Integra stepped up to the plate. Dave Westgate himself at one point in time, he offered me his car.
Wow.
And seeing other race car drivers actually offer you a car, it shows you a lot of respect from a driver to a driver. I mean, when you're on the track, it's a whole different ball game. Once that net goes up, we're all here to win, guys. So you don't really have too much of a friend. Me personally, I try to keep it as clean as you can see, Kyle. I try to keep it as clean as I can on the field. I try not to touch anybody. Try to keep it as clean as possible. And I gave that car all I can give it for this year. And for what it's been through, the end of last year, I got sugar in my gas tank from some irate people. Don't know who that is, but we'll just leave it at that. And I had a sugar issue this year. We got through that, and the car was fast. Last race, I guess you didn't want to stay together for me.
Yeah, it comes apart in that last race, but that's okay. Still able to win the championship. 40-some-odd points ahead in the final tally. I know Christian Herman was a big factor. I know your family's a big factor. Unfortunately, with the COVID pandemic, no spectators in the stands. That played a role in your season as well, with your family not really able to get into the grandstands to see the racing. But who's behind this effort? Who do you want to give a shout-out to that helped you pick up a second straight title?
Well, I gotta thank a couple of people. Kevin at Simpsons Auto Care, he's a outstanding guy. He actually stepped to the plate dramatically for me this year and last year and the year before. He's actually been my right-hand man when it comes to needing anything or anything like that. I also have Rich over at South Coast Power Equipment, Rich and his son. His son, Richie, actually raced with my son this year, and he gave my son a lot of pointers that he needed. And with them knowing the bandos a little more than me, Rich and his little Richie, they both helped us out. I two guys right there. I call little Richie a guy too because he's like one of us. He's a racist, and now he's a guy.
Yeah.
Those two guys stepped up a lot, and I really appreciate them guys. I got Freddie over at Freddie's Auto Body. I gave that guy a call. He wasn't a previous sponsor. Mike, bring it right in. He took care of me. That's Finn's Auto Body in Coventry. Freddie really took care of me. After that, I got to thank Atlantic Heating and Plumbing. John, Larry Sr., Ant and Nick over there. Those Cole Lucas, those guys, great guys. They every morning, I was racing going. How you doing? Need anything? They were always right there on my shoulder to give me a hand. Mike Marfio and the Marfio family at Mikey's Motorsports. He was up at Waterford. He had me go up there a couple times. He helped me out with my car. I raced the Waterford a few times this year too. It's a little rougher over there than it is at Seekonk. A little more of geometry changes than I thought I had to do. So with being in the championship at Seekonk, I didn't want to change too much to the car for the Waterford setup, just because I didn't want to move too much stuff in between with being in the championship. After that, I got King Lock, Deb and Matt, great people. They've been on with me since day one. Eddie Smith over there at Smitty's Towing and Recovery, great guy. He gets me every aftermarket part I can possibly need. I get a lot of junk cars, so whatever I need, he has it there for me. Kent County Classic Rock, 105.5. Crazy Chris DiPaolo. He's done an interview with me a bunch of times. He's always worried about how race is going. Always has me on his radio station, and we takes care of us. Always has something good to say about us. And last but not least, I gotta really thank Christian Herman. He stepped up to the plate. He let me take his car out, and not to mention me and Westgate got into a wreck. The kid didn't even care. Me and Westgate got into a little fender bender. No problem, Mike. Just drive it. We'll fix it. Don't worry about it. Kid really stepped up to the plate. And the people I have behind the scenes all the time is Russell Lacey. He's also known as Junior. He owns Lacey's Plate, and he's my crew chief and also helps my son out a lot. Got Randy Hyam, Chris Del Rosso, and Christian Herman. Once again, he was there every weekend, helped me on his own car, but for me to race. And then also his father, Christian Herman's father, Ray, stepped up to the plate. It wasn't a good race. We had some issues with the car, but even at Waterford, I was able to take out his car, a Waterford car at Waterford for a final. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my mom, my dad, and my children sister, my wife, and my family, and everybody who comes out and support me. I mean, it takes a lot to want to come out every Friday night, sit in the cold, or sit in the baking sun. It takes a lot of the people. And with them, they were actually, the only time they got to see it is from videos that they see, or once in a while you might see them try to stand outside the fence, and that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's obviously a difficult year for everybody involved with it, right? The track, the drivers, the fans especially. You know, we miss our great fans. Looking forward to hopefully having a somewhat normal 2021 year in the middle of this pandemic. And race fans listening out there, this is what I mean when I say that, you know, there's more to racing than just the driver. There's a lot of people here that Mike's mentioned, his sponsors, his crew members, his family, just generally his friends too, that all are supportive of him. And without those people, he wouldn't be a two-time Sport 4 champion. And I'm sure Mike looking forward to hoping to make that 3 straight in 2021 maybe?
I'm thinking, I mean, I'm going for just my son to just try to shoot for him, but a lot of people are pushing me on to the 3 for 3, and I'm like, at one point in time, Kyle, do you have to kind of think to yourself, is it that point in time to move up, or do I stay here and go again?
Right.
I mean, granted, Kyle, where I am, I have nothing but fun. Like, it's even the night of the accident, when I wrecked my car, everybody seeing me, I still had a smile on my face. Accidents happen, you know, it happens. I mean, I got so many people to back me on this whole racing career that it kind of, nothing really gets you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just, all right, I got a body shop, I got this, so you have many different things. Even Joe Saradinsky and Sorgi Salisbury, they two guys right there also stepped up to the plate for me this year, me and my son. So it's like, there's never a downtime really if you really have the right people and don't burn any bridges in the sport.
Yeah. And Mike's been lucky to be in position he is, picking up his 2nd straight in the Sport 4 division this year, of course, sponsored by Everett's Auto Parts. I want to thank them and all of our 2020 sponsors, part of the Fast Friday slate. Mike, thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing you at the track in 2021, and we wish you and your family a safe and healthy winter.
You too, Kyle. Thank you very much, and thank you to Seekonk Speedway.
All right, that's been Michael Fort. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more of our 2020 champions and get to that iRacing series that ran over the course of this year. What's coming up with that in 2021 is right around the turn. Stick with us. Welcome back to the Seekonk Speedway Champions Podcast. Thanks for joining us as part of this edition. The final edition is part of our racing in 2020 that took place as we get ready to move into the winter months and get a flashback in time once again as part of our 75-year podcast, talking to some of the past of Seekonk Speedway, some of the present, and maybe even some of the future as part of our Bandolero divisions throughout the off-season. Want to mention our final 2 race divisions and our champions for those, starting with the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Pure Stock class. In 2020, another fantastic year for this division. You just can't underappreciate what this division brings to the table. I know there was no spectators. Some of you watch the races back on YouTube. You still can if you'd like to join our YouTube channel for free. You can watch the races back. But this division continues to put on a show. 26 cars in competition this year in the Helger South Coast Power Equipment Pure Stocks. And it goes right down to the wire again. They cross each other over. They race each other clean. They put on a great race. Very rarely do they wreck equipment. This year was probably the best year I've seen the Pure Stocks compete at Seekonk Speedway. Goes right down to the wire. Doug Benoit, Danny Massa, Greg Perry. Perry, a 2019 champion. Benoit had won it in 2018. Massa looking for his first title. So close for Danny Massa. The best year we've seen out of him in his multiple years of competition. Almost. Very consistent this year, just not quite enough. 6 points the difference for Doug Benoit to pick up the win. Benoit and Massa went into the last night tied for the championship lead. Benoit comes out of it 6 points ahead as your 2020 Helger South Coast Power Equipment Pure Stock champion. Perry was 3rd. Unfortunately, the mishap for him had nothing to do with his mistake. Maybe it was, I'm not sure actually. The battery fell out of the car. The battery fell out of the car in one of the races. Obviously, it wasn't able to finish the race. That hurt his chances in the championship. Benoit picking up his 2nd title in the last 3 years in that familiar white and blue, number 2. He picked up 4 wins in the 10 races, propelling him to the title. He finished inside the top 5 in all but one event. The consistency
was there for Doug Benoit in 2020. And the 1 week he didn't finish in the top 5, he was still inside the top 10 in a field that spread somewhere between 15 and 20 cars average each week. So Massa finishing second, 6 points back. Greg Perry finishing third. Of course, that battery issue halting his chances severely. Jeremy Lambert finishing fourth. Good run for him. And Mike Hendricks rounding out the top 5 in the Pure Stock Championship battle. So Doug Benoit, your 2020 champion, his second title in 3 years, and expect him to be a threat again in 2021. He picked up the win and the championship on the final night. Great way to go out from 2020. I mentioned the winners in the other divisions. In the Pure Stocks this year, it was Doug Benoit. I mentioned 4 wins. Greg Perry won 2 races. Jeremy Lambert won. Danny Massa won. Mike Hendricks won. And it was Scott Sestodio returning to pick up 1 win on the season. Sestodio up there in the championship fight early, did not run some of the races in the middle of the season, and ended up just outside the top 10 in the final tally. So Doug Benoit, your Pure Stock champion. Thanks to Helger South Coast Power Equipment for sponsoring that division, and they will be back in 2021. Our final on-track division of the season, the next pit stop legend cars at Seekonk Speedway. Nick Wascola and Keith Wascola and the next pit stop team returning in 2021 once again, back on board, and the sponsor for 2020. Thanks to them for their help. Jake Johnson, this kid, they call him the Jet for short, and it shows on the racetrack. He put together one heck of a year in his return to the Legend Cars. The story on Jake, years ago, picking up the Legends Championship at Seekonk in 2016, moved up from there to the late models and the pro stocks, picked up wins at Seekonk in both of those divisions competitively, went touring a little bit with the American Canadian Tour, the Pro All-Star Series. He's run the Oxford 250, attempted to qualify for that. He's run the Snowball Derby's Snowflake event. Not the actual Snowball Derby, but the Snowflake, the night before, the 100-lapper. He's been down there and run that. This year, decided he wanted to return to the Legend Cars. What a decision he made. We talked to him weeks ago on the podcast about how the 2020 season went for him, picking up the championship in that division in the Legend Cars. His second title, of course, that first coming back in 2016, returning to the Legend Cars this year, and it was a thrilling year for him. Johnson picks up 4 wins on the season, top 5 in all but 2 of the 10 races, and those 4 wins were dominant. He was the car to beat most of the weeks on the track, en route to his second Seekonk Speedway Championship. 35 cars taking the green flag in this Legends division this year. This division continues to grow. I don't see it stopping growing at all. It's just going to continue every year to evolve. Nick Wascola, Keith Wascola, the Wascola Racing team helping us out to grow this a little bit. The competitors have all come out, and it's put on one heck of a show. Johnson picking up the big championship. Reagan Parent finishing second. Of course, when you look at the final tally for 2020, tally it up, it's a 42-point gap. Johnson won it by. It was a little bit closer than that until the final couple weeks when Reagan Parent was involved in a wreck, but it was clear Jake Johnson was going to be the favorite. Parent second in the championship. Mason Tessier was third. Giovanni Ruggiero, great run for him this year, finishing fourth. And Paul Newcomb rounding out the top 5. We mentioned Paul's sons earlier competing in the Bandoleros. He competes in the Legend Cars and gets a top 5 points finish out of that number 71. The winners in the Legends this season, Jake Johnson with 4 wins. Wade O'Mecky picked up 1 victory on the season. Brandon Hammond picked up 1. Luke LeBrun, the big 35-lapper, the $1,000 to win race, 1 win for him. Josh Parsons got 1. And then 2 first-time winners. Giovanni Ruggiero picking up his first career win in the next Pit Stop Legend Cars on the final night. Great job by him. And it was Jacob Rowdy Burns picking up his first career win a couple of weeks before that. So, actually, it was the week before that. So the final 2 weeks of the season saw a first-time winner in the next Pit Stop Legend. So great run for both of those drivers. And Jake Johnson picking up the championship in 2020. I mentioned we talked to him a couple of weeks ago about his path, a couple of episodes ago, I guess would be the right way to say it, about his path to the championship in the next Pit Stop Legends in 2020 and returning to the action track of the East. Our final group of thank yous for sponsors: TTM Motorsports, Dutch Auto Body, the Seekonk Fire Department and their EMS services, Seekonk Police, the ambulance service that we use this year, also on board every single week, Preferred Towing, Mark Labby and his team, our staff at the race day, of course, our race director, Tim Bolduck, our Bandolero race director and assistant to the race director on Friday nights, Lenny Ellis, Dave Alburn, everybody at St. Germain who's been behind the buttons pushing this podcast to put it together once I send them all the pieces. He's been helping to do that and get it out to all of you. Thanks to him, our office staff, Gail Pangolinan, everybody that's working daily in the middle of a pandemic year, trying to get the facility open and running safely with this date. Great job by everybody this year. Our race day staff couldn't have done it without them. Of course, the guys in the tunnel, the girls in the tunnel, the girls in the pits, the guys in the pits, everybody on board for the 2020 Fast Friday season. There's our list of sponsors from Fast Friday. And before we bring on our final guest, I'm going to introduce the iRacing Series from 2020, the Road Trip Tour. The idea that myself and Ed St. Germain had, based on what we had seen with the pandemic, didn't think we were going to get open right away. Obviously, we didn't. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will talk about that iRacing Series, see what happened in 2020, 8-race road trip tour, talk about who won the championship, who won races, and we'll talk to the champion right around the turn. Stick with us on the Seekonk Speedway 2020 Champions Podcast. All right, as we get set for our final couple segments as part of the Seekonk Speedway Champions Podcast, I want to talk about the virtual side of Seekonk Speedway racing in 2020. With everything that went on with the pandemic, we decided to go to iRacing in the virtual spectrum of things. Noticing with a couple others we're going to start up, we decided to do it on our own, and man, was it a success as part of the Seekonk Speedway Road Trip Tour, we called it, on iRacing. Now, those not familiar with iRacing, iRacing is a simulation platform that allows drivers to compete with their own steering wheel and pedals at home, in their backyard, if they have a setup outside. I've seen some of those that are set up outside with wiring that goes out. I've seen a lot of them in the basements, a lot of them in the bedrooms. You can basically set up an iRacing rig rather quickly, probably with a good computer, a wheel, a pedal, and a good monitor, maybe for $1,000, $1,250 to get everything set up. Then you got to buy the subscription. It's a little bit of an intuitive process for a fan that might not have driving experience or doesn't want to get into driving, but it's really worth it. I mean, this is a great platform. I compete on there myself, racing just about daily. It gives drivers a chance to compete at some of the real-life racetracks. Of course, Seekonk not on there yet, hoping to get that solved at some point in the future. But right now, you can compete at basically any track that the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and Truck Series goes to, and a lot of short tracks in New England. Stafford's on there. Thompson's on there. I mean, the list of short tracks across the country, Southern National, Five Flags Speedway. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Some historic tracks like Concord Speedway. This year, we decided to go virtual due to the pandemic and run a virtual road trip tour. Before we get going with it, I want to thank Speed51.com, big supporters of this road trip tour, broadcasted it for us. Of course, Connor Sullivan jumped on board with our own Kevin Boucher for most of the events and announced it to all the fans out there. I want to thank him and all the sponsors, as well as Speed51. Without Speed51, we really wouldn't have been able to showcase the talent and the races to a virtual audience online, whether it be on Facebook Live, Speed51's website. Big thanks to Patrick Hahey and Speed51 for helping us put it together. As far as the real-life racing goes, of course, the pandemic really affected it. So the virtual racing was a chance for everybody to get together, have a little bit of fun, talk to each other, race it out. Yeah, there were a few rough races, couple accidents here and there, but 8-race tour, 8 different tracks, and all 8 races were run with a fixed super late model car. So the Pro Stock car was used, and the fixed part of it, when I say fixed, I mean the setup under the hood was the exact same for every car. So it strictly came down to driving ability. We're going to welcome in the Virtual Series champion in the next part of the podcast, but it was Ryan Kuhn, a 2018 real-life late model champion at Seekonk, taking control of this iRacing series, winning 5 out of the 8 races in that Bernier's Liquors number 72. He was top 5 in all but one race. When you look at the championship, a dominating victory in the 2020 championship, 30 points up over Ryan Doucette for Ryan Kuhn. Doucette, a former Legends Cars competitor at Seekonk, running with us, finished second. Jake Matheson, a former Nick's Pit Stop Legends champion at Seekonk, finished third in the championship. PJ Evans, a Bandolero competitor, was fourth in the overall title, and fifth was Thomas Axum, a real-life spotter who works with Ryan Kuhn. So a mix there of drivers and crew chiefs and spotters and staff was part of the virtual series. Rest of the top 10 in the championship, Brandon Wilkinson, a spotter in real life, was 6th. Richie Murray, our defending sport truck champion from 2019, was 7th. Chase Belcher was 8th, a former sport truck champion. Trent Goodrow, a former competitor in our Legend Cars and late models now, was 9th. And Brad Souza, This the son of Lenny Souza, a sport truck competitor, rounded out the top 10 in the championship. Of course, Nick Wood was involved in there, a pit crew member. Reese Bogue, we talked about him earlier. Tom Scully III, a Sportsman regular. Richard Reagan, a Legends competitor. Mason Tessier, a Legends competitor. The list just goes on and on and on. 51 different drivers taking the green flag at some point in a points race on iRacing this year. Ryan Kuhn picked up 5 wins on the season. Thomas Axum picked up 2 of his own, and Brandon Wilkinson, who I mentioned, picked up the win in the opener at the Lanier National Speedway. So 8 different races in 2020, 8 different tracks. Of course, the super late model race is part of all of them, and I mentioned that fixed setup really equaling the playing field. We ran races at the Lanier National Speedway, of course, basically defunct now, but on iRacing. Southern National Motorsports Park, the Bow Ring at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Irwindale Speedway, Five Flags Speedway, South Boston Speedway, Oxford Plains Speedway, and Myrtle Beach Speedway. So a couple of tracks in there I mentioned are not even in existence anymore. They've been either shut down or destroyed. So, good that we could have iRacing to go back. Of course, we had our championship point fund as well, $250 to win the championship for Ryan Kuhn. We paid out a point fund to the top 24 in the championship standings, and also paid out per race. It was $75 to win each of the iRacing events. That is thanks to our great sponsors. We paid the top 5, $75 to win, $50 for second, $30 for third, $25 and $20 for the top 5 drivers at the end of every race. Then our point fund, and we had some special awards throughout the field. Mention those in a second, but want to thank our sponsors, Anchor Paws Rescue, Ryan Vaness and his team, as well as the team at Team V Racing. Want to thank them for their great support in 2020. The B Main, when we had a B Main, Ryan Vaness and the Team V team put up $11 to win each B Main, and Anchor Paws Rescue put up $25 to the halfway lap leader in all 8 races. Big thanks to those guys. Trent Goodrow Designs giving out a free paint scheme on iRacing, a virtual paint scheme, to the winner of the White Flag Lap. Whoever led the White Flag Lap, which I believe in all 8 races was the winner of the race in the end, they got a free paint scheme courtesy of Trent Goodrow. Thanks, Trent and his team. Atlantic Yacht Rigging, Mike Floyd, a Legends competitor. This is his company. $25 he gave out to the Hard Luck Award for every race. Now, that was determined by race control, so me, the driver that had the toughest luck in that race, $25 for Mike Floyd and Atlantic Yacht Rigging. Helger South Coast Power Equipment, Rich Helger stepping up not only on the real life side but on the virtual side as well. I want to thank him sponsoring 2 races in 2020. Thank you to him for that, and also sponsoring the Helger South Coast Power Move of the Race Award. The Hard Charger, the driver that gained the most spots in each race, earned $25. Rich Helger's total value here, well over $500 support. Thank you to his team. Richie's Insulation, Eddie Silva, Brad Souza helping setting this up. He sponsored one event this season. Of course, his race sponsorship coming at South Boston, the Virginias for Racers 150. Thanks to Eddie Silva, Richie's Insulation, for their support. Lucas Milhop, the sponsors of Carlin Levesque and the Sport Forward Division in real life, sponsoring the $4.44, a very odd number, but something that people knew, right at lap 44. So it was all 4s. Lap 44, the 4th place driver at that lap earned $4.44. Thank you to the team at Lucas Milhop for that award. And then some of our race sponsors this year. Circuit Cryptocurrency, sponsoring an event early in the season and also event in the middle of the season. Thank you to them for their sponsorship. Viper Graphics, PJ Ferns and the team sponsoring one event. Thank you to them for their 2020 support of the iRacing Road Trip Tour. And then we had Watermark Electric, Dave Campbell and his team sponsoring each heat race. $8 to win a heat race on iRacing in 2020 as part of the virtual tour. Thank you, Dave Campbell and his team. Bernier's Liquors, Ryan Kuhn. He's a sponsor. They're a sponsor of him. We'll talk to him in the next segment. They came on board big this year, sponsoring 2 races on the Road Trip Tour. Thank you to Bernier's Liquors. And then 2 special awards throughout our field. 12th place, we called it the Mid-Pack Maniac. $12 to finish 12th in every race. A&A Auto Parts, that's Bobby Pellin's company, Big Bob Pellin. Thank you, Bob, for supporting the iRacing Road Trip Tour. $12 to every 12th place finisher in all 8 races. And the biggest contingency award, race by race, was the Route 6 Auto Malkia Crime to Pay More Than a Dime 10th place finishing award. Every 10th place finisher in all 8 races earned $100. $800 worth of sponsorship to finish in 10th place over the course of 8 races. So big thanks to the team there at Route 6 Auto Mall Kia for sponsoring the iRacing Road Trip Tour. I mentioned our race sponsors. Again, I'll run through those. Rich Helger at Helger South Coast Power Equipment, Circuit Cryptocurrency, Bernier's Liquors, Viper Graphics, and Richie's Insulation sponsoring the awards as part of our overall race sponsorship as part of the iRacing Road Trip Tour in 2020. Again, 50-something cars taking the green flag. Heck of an effort by the drivers behind the wheel. I was the administrator of the races in 2020, setting everything up, getting the cars on the track, getting everything ready, making the race director calls. Really, that's it. That was our team. The drivers, me, Ed St. Germain, again, behind the buttons, pushing everything, getting our logos ready, helping to get our sponsorship ready. Big thanks to him. But really, thanks to our competitors, our sponsors, and Speed 51 for sponsoring and broadcasting this iRacing Road Trip Tour. We had Kevin Boucher in the booth for the races. Thank you to Kevin. You guys know him well. And Connor Sullivan as well, jumping in the booth for some of our Road Trip Tour races. I was in the booth for the first one with Connor. That feels like forever ago. All right, we're going to take our final break of the Champions Podcast. We've talked about iRacing, set it all up. Let's talk to our virtual champion as part of the iRacing Road Trip Tour, Ryan Kuhn. And that you may have just heard that ding. That's him texting me, telling me he's ready to talk as part of our iRacing Road Trip Tour Championship. Ryan Kuhn, the virtual champion, as part of the Road Trip Tour. We're going to talk to him and wrap the podcast coming up around the break. All right, welcome back. Final segment of the Seekonk Speedway Champions Podcast for 2020. We've mentioned all of our Fast Friday champions so far in 2020. Want to congratulate them on a great year on the regular racetrack. Of course, looking forward to our 2021 schedule. What's going to be coming out here in the next couple of days, if not a week or so. Want to welcome in our virtual champion from 2020. I mentioned at the beginning, we started off this virtual series. I just talked about it in the last segment, but we want to welcome in as part of our final segment of the Champions Podcast, our sixth 2020 champion at Seekonk. Now, not necessarily the same level of champion as some of our other champions. Of course, this is something completely different, but wanted to get some insight from Ryan Kuhn, a former late model real-life champion back in 2018, I believe it was, and now Ryan, an iRacing champion. Walk me through. I mean, you're an avid iRacer. You're not anything new to iRacing. But back in the pandemic, we started up this iRacing series. I mean, this must have been exciting for you, knowing how much success you have on there, and then getting together with some of your friends from Seekonk to go out and put on a race.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. I was definitely looking forward once they announced the Seekonk Road Trip Tour, and Tommy and I were really looking forward to it. We know we're really good on there, and we got a lot of iRacing experience, lots of years, lots of laps, and that's what it really takes to get good on iRacing is just continue to test, and just see what you can do on runs.
Yeah, and Ryan's been an avid iRacer, as I mentioned, for many years. Not anything new. Showing his talent, though, this year. 8 different races in 2020 as part of the Road Trip Tour. We had 8 different tracks, all in one car. The super late model, a fixed setup, and Ryan picks up wins in 5 of the 8 races, top 5 finishes in all but one. And in that one race, Ryan, you were up there in the top 5, just didn't quite finish there due to some light contact, but 5 wins out of 8 races. You mentioned Tom Axum, your spotter, and your real-life friend as well, picked up 2 wins. Brandon Wilkinson picking up 1 win as well. I mean, was there a certain race that you had the most fun in? You had a couple races, especially down there at the end. Myrtle Beach comes to mind. I know you won the championship and won that last race, but to me, that was probably one of your toughest races. That and the bull ring seemed to me as 2 of the races that were the closest at the front that involved you.
That last Myrtle Beach race was definitely a tough one. I had to earn that. Doucette gave me a run for my money. And still, as a lot of people are still trying to get used to this tire model. He has more experience on the tire model due to more of the NASCAR series stuff because they've ran on that tire model for over a year now. But, I'm fairly new to the tire model still. I ran a little bit of NASCAR stuff when the tire model came out, but I kind of really stopped that stuff and went to the more super late model stuff. But, it's definitely a learning curve with the new tire model and save tires. And, it seems to rely more on tire temps than tire wear at this point. But definitely a learning experience and definitely a different learning curve.
Well, so Ryan picks up this iRacing championship. Ryan, put the iRacing aside. Your real life success this year was good as well. The one moment there is the flip over at Thunder Road, right? Not a great moment. Up on his roof at Thunder Road. Probably one of his, more shining moments of the 2020 season. Not a good moment, but one that people are going to remember. But the real life season has gone well as well. What has it been? I mean, is it difficult to run the iRacing versus the real life? Do you find similarities? Do you think the real life helps the iRacing or vice versa?
More with this, we go back to the tire model with the super late model. It seems like you got to run more of a realistic line for sure. But it definitely helps your real life experience. iRacing's a huge help. I think a lot of drivers could say the same. But, we go back to this year. I mean, honestly, it wasn't our greatest year. We really fired off strong and kind of died middle of the season, and then kind of picked it up back at the end of the year. And we had a good run at Thunder Road in the pass car, had a really good run in the Milk Bowl, and obviously we flipped over. But and then the last week at Oxford, I think we had a really good car at the end. I saved my tires really hard. I think we were the quickest car at the end. But, it's just really hard to pass. We had a lot of learning experience this year. We learned a lot about the cars right at the end of the year. With both cars, we found something in both the cars right at the end of the year. And I think going into next year, I think we can go out and win some races.
Well, Ryan's going to be a avid competitor as part of the iRacing next year, I'm sure. He's also going to be an avid competitor part of the real life. He's trying to find a ride for Speed Weeks right now for the World Series of Asphalt Stock Car Racing down at the new Smyrna Speedway. He is going to be busy as part of the 2021 season, just like he was in 2020. I mentioned at the end of the last segment the new iRacing series that we're going to be putting together for 2021, the preview series, the 6-race series, 6 different tracks, 6 different cars, basically 2 races a month between January, February, and March. One of them I'm going to sneak into April, though, so we can avoid some of that Speed Weeks events, so people are not racing up against Speed Weeks. Of course, I'll be down there as well, so kind of hard to administrate the races from Daytona Beach. Ryan, any sponsors, any supporters you want to give a thanks to? I mean, the iRacing's kind of your steering wheel and your desk chair, but what about on the real life side? Are there sponsors, supporters you want to give a thanks to?
Yeah, I got to give a huge shout out to Everett's Auto Parts. If they didn't jump on board 4 years ago, I'd still be Legend Car Racing. And that's really what fired off my late model career. We're really underfunded, and we really needed their support. We got their support, went late model racing, and we went out and won a championship in 2018. So huge shout out to Everett's Auto Parts. Roy, you guys are the best. Bernier's Liquors, he does a lot of our iRacing stuff. He helps out our whole team. Modern Auto Body out of Brockton, Mass. Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much out of all your sponsors.
Well, Ryan's actually the winningest purse money driver as part of the iRacing series as well. I don't have a total number, but I can guarantee you this driver collected at least $500 in 8 races. I think probably more than that. I have to go back and see. That, of course, credit to our sponsors I talked about in the last segment. Bernier's Liquors was one of them, as Ryan mentioned, picking up one of the race sponsorships in 2020. Well, it's been great to talk to Ryan Kuhn. Been great to talk to all of our iRacing competitors this year. Been great to talk to all of our 2020 Seekonk Speedway champions. We talked to Ethan Dion. We talked to Mike Lefort. Of course, Doug Benoit picking up the Pure Stock title this year. Isaiah Newcomb in the Seekonk Speedway Grand Prix Bandolero Outlaws Series. And, of course, Jake Johnson as well, I've mentioned a couple times, picking up the championship in the Legend Cars. Ryan, our Road Trip Tour iRacing Series champion in 2020. With that, that's going to wrap the Seekonk Speedway Champions Coronation podcast. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank all of our guests for coming on, and thank you for listening to our 2020 Champions podcast. Stick with us over the next couple of months. The race season is not going anywhere. We're going to have a podcast about our 2021 schedule. We'll bring on some guests about that as well. We'll also have some 75-year history podcasts as well. Stick with us over the winter. Stay safe. If you're going down for Speed Weeks, enjoy it. We will talk to you soon right here on the Seekonk Speedway podcast series. For now, I'm Kyle Souza of Souza Media. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy your off season, and we will see you again in 2021.